Hello guys, my name is Yana and welcome to Yappy Corporate Webinars channel. Please subscribe and stay with us every Friday. It's gonna be fun. So, will I surprise you if I tell you that you already know something from the topic that we are going to study today, which is passive? For example, in a social conversation, you might be asked, when were you born or where were you born? And you might answer, I was born in Ukraine or I was born in November. So let's think. Who did this action, you or your mom? You may think that it was you, but it was definitely your mom who gave you birth. So in active, you have to say, my mom gave me birth in November, and in passive, you say, I was born in November. And that is the principal difference between active and passive voice in English language. In active voice, there is a person who does an action, or you do an action. And in passive voice, in active voice, yeah, I'm sorry guys. And in passive voice, the action is done to you, or the action is done to some objects. Okay, let's have some more examples. And here I need my friend Martha. She will assist me. Say hello to Martha. So Martha likes bananas. She lives with me in my flat. She likes to play with my son. She plays with him every day. Now she's waving her hand to you, and now she just has jumped on the board. Okay, so let's think. Who did all these actions? Martha did? Yes, she did. But let's imagine if I say, Martha was given to me by my friend, or Martha was born in Africa, or Martha was hidden behind the flip chart, or Martha was put on my shoulder. So, did Martha do all these actions? No, she did not. Some actions were performed by me, some actions were done by other people, and in some cases, it was not important for us who performed these actions. So guys, in these cases, you have to use passive voice. Okay, thank you, Martha. You can have a rest. So now you're going to ask me, so how I can construct passive voice? In order to construct passive voice, you have to take the verb to be plus past participle of the verb. This means that you take the third form of the verb if your verb is irregular, and you add ending ed if your verb is regular. So, seems easy, but for the verb to be, guys, as passive voice can be used in different tenses, the same as active voice, you must be very careful with changes of the verb to be according to different tenses. So let's have a look how it changes. Okay, let's review the verb to be. So the present simple tense for the verb to be will be am, is, or are. For example in passive voice, many things are produced in China. That we know. The present continuous tense for the verb to be is am, is, are, being. For example, where is your watch? My watch is being repaired at the moment, right? The present perfect tense for the verb to be is have been or has been. For example, the task has been carefully prepared by the teacher, for example. The past simple tense is was or were. For example, the webinar was prepared. Past continuous tense was, were, been. For example, the webinar was being prepared during some time. The past perfect tense had been. For example, the cake had been eaten before I came back home, unfortunately. The future tense will be, like the exam, will be passed successfully. And passive can be used with modals, such as can be, would be, should be, may be, or must be. Guys, the forms of the verb to be must be memorized. Okay, now I would like to remind you, it's very important information that to organize passive correctly, you have to take the form of the verb to be plus past participle. Don't forget to use past participle of the main verb. For example, the terrorist was arrested early this morning, or Toyota cars are made in Japan, or a new class representative will be chosen on Monday. So the verb to be changes correspondingly according to the tense, and also you have to take the past participle of the main verb. Now let's have some practice. Look at these sentences. Try to identify which tense you need to use. and open the brackets in the correct passive form. You have 1 minute to produce this task. Okay, guys, let's start our checking. So shampoo is tested on animals. Okay, I'm sorry, is misspelling. Is tested on animals before it is sold in shops. So it's a fact. Here we need to use present simple tense. This house was built in the 19th century. This happened in the past, so you use past simple of the verb to be plus past participle. The missing children have been found safe and sound, as they say. This happened recently. We have it as an announcement, so you'd better use here present perfect. And a new bridge will be constructed next year, right? So it's future for passive voice. Okay, so thank you for practicing these sentences together with me. And now look what I have. I have a magic box here. Let's try to find and see what objects do I have here and make some examples in passive voice. So first, I have a candy. Okay, let's talk about this candy in passive voice. This candy is made of glass, actually Murano glass, and it was presented to me by my friend, and actually it was brought from Venice, so it's a nice present. Okay, what else do I have? I have a postcard, like with New Year, let it snow, very nice one, and this card also was given to me by my friend. It was a pleasure. Okay, next, what I have here, very nice notebook. And if you notice, this notebook is made of wood. And the shape of girl and the very nice phrase, keep calm and stay Ukrainian, was carved on the top cover. So very beautiful. And also I have in my box a book. This book has some illustrations and it's called Stay Calm. Yeah, so in any situations, you should stay calm. And if I want to say about the author of this book, I can say Stay Calm was written by Jenny Camp. So guys, when I was talking about this object, mostly I used passive voice as it was not important who did some of these actions. It was important that actions were done, first of all. But if I wanted to say who did those actions, I added preposition by at the end of the sentence and mentioned who did them, as the notebook was made by some company or the book was written by some author. So if you want to emphasize who did some actions, you can use preposition by at the end of the passive sentence. Okay, so now let's summarize and think in which situations you have to use passive voice, because we had a lot of examples. Now let's talk a little bit about theory. So you need to use passive voice if your focus is on action, not on the doer of the action. The second case is when doer, or the person who does an action, is unknown or unimportant. Yes, I have mentioned it before. Next, in the news and in reports, when you read some magazine or you watch BBC News, you will hear a lot of passive voice. It's just an announcement of the news. Also, different announcements can be written in passive voice. Then, if you want to be less personal, so to say something avoiding me or I, you can make an impersonal statement and also use passive voice in this case. And when you're describing some procedures, you should also use passive voice. Now, guys, tell me, do you happen to know how chocolate is made? If not, let's have a look. So you can see pictures which describe the procedure, which should be strictly done one by one without omitting any of them. Let's try to describe this procedure using passive voice. When you see the text here, and please pay attention to the words in bold because they are used in passive. So, to begin, the cocoa comes from the cacao tree, which is grown in the South American and African continents and the country of Indonesia. Once the pods are ripe and red, they are harvested and the white cocoa beans are removed. Following a period of fermentation, they are then laid out on a large tray so they can dry under the sun. Next, they are placed into large sacks and delivered to the factory. They are then roasted at a temperature of 350 degrees, after which the beans are crushed and separated from their outer shell. In the final stage, this inner pod that is left is pressed and chocolate is produced. Okay. So guys, don't forget to eat some chocolate after our webinar because it stimulates your brain activity and you will learn the topic passive voice and remember it much better. So when you received announcement for our webinar, you have probably read some information that you are going to meet Mr. Passive Voice. So who is this Mr. Passive Voice? This is a person who mostly talks using passive constructions. Have you ever met such person? Well, I'm sure you have not. And unfortunately, Mr. Passive couldn't come to our studio live, so we're going to have a short video conference with him. And while watching him talk, please pay attention to constructions that he uses and try to write down or memorize as many actions that were done by him as you can. Okay, so let's get started.
The cat was fed, the dog was walked, the newspaper was delivered, the trash was taken out, the mail was put into the mailbox, the gas tank was filled, the tires were checked, the maps were put into a car, the fish were fed, the lawn was mowed, the kitchen was cleaned, the travel arrangements were made, and, yes, the coffee pot was turned off. The dishwasher was started, the plants were watered, the windows were locked.
Hey, Lawrence. Has anyone ever told you that you speak in passive voice?
That was never told to me.
Okay, guys, so really a pleasant meeting with Mr. Passive Voice. Now, let's have a check how carefully you were listened to him and how many actions you managed to write down correctly. So let's have a check. The cat was fed. The dog was walked. The newspaper was delivered. The trash was taken out. The gas tank was filled. I'm sorry, I've missed. The mail was put. The tires were checked. The maps were put into the mailbox. The fish were fed. The lawn was mowed. The kitchen was cleaned. The travel arrangements were made. And that's not the end. The coffee pot was turned off. The dishwasher was started. The plants were watered. The windows were locked. A lot of actions that Mr. Passive did, and all of them are mostly in past simple tense, because if something is done, you say it was done. Yes, the task was done. Now, let's create our own lists. Please think, what did you do today? And make a list of actions using passive voice. You will have 1 minute to do this task while I am writing on the board for you, okay? So please think carefully. Okay, so are you ready with your lists? Because I'm ready. So I will start and you can share with your lists in the comments after our webinar. So, for example, in my list of things, my baby was fed, the car was driven, sentences were written, and the plan was made up. And what about you? I wonder what you did yesterday. So please share your list in the comments and I will check mistakes if there are any. Okay, thank you for your work. Now, guys, let's go in. We are going to find the difference between active and passive sentences, and you will learn the ability how to transform active and passive sentences correctly. Please have a look. Okay, so in order to transform active sentence into passive sentence, you have to follow several steps. So, step number 1. You have to identify the object of the active sentence and place it at the beginning of passive sentences. So in the sentence, the postman delivers the letters at 9 o'clock. The object is the letters. Step 2. Identify the tense of the active verb and put the verb to be into the same tense. So here you have active verb delivers. It is used in present simple. So please put the verb to be in present simple. For plural form, it will be are. And step 3, turn the main active verb into the past participle form. For example, delivered. And you have a passive sentence. The letters are delivered at 9 o'clock. So here you pay attention to the action. You don't want to say who delivers them. You just want to speak about this news. Okay, let's have some practice, guys. Now you're going to do it on your own. So don't forget about the steps. Step number 1, identify the object. Step number 2, identify the tense. Step number 3, put the main verb into the past participle. Please have 2 minutes to do this task. Okay, let's check how you did the sentences. Step number 1, you have to identify the object in the first sentence. So the object will be the suspect. You put it on the first sentence, on the first place in the sentence. Then you look at the tense in which active sentence is used. Arrested, this is past simple. So you put the verb to be in past simple and you say the suspect was, and you put the main verb into the past participle. So the suspect was arrested. You can add, if you need this information, by police at the end of the sentence, or you may omit it if you don't want to emphasize who did this action. So the suspect was arrested by police last night. Okay, now let's have a look on the second sentence. Here, the object will be him, which you need to change into he if you put it at the beginning. So he, then you see that have found, this is present perfect tense. Your task is to put the verb to be in present perfect. He has been, and the main verb into past participle. He has been found after an intensive search. Okay, the next sentence. Two detectives were questioning him and charged him with murder. Here we have two tenses, past continuous and past simple. So the first action will be he was being, don't forget about being, questioned. He was being questioned. Okay, he was being questioned and was charged with murder. And was charged with murder. Okay, he was being and he was charged with murder. And the last sentence is in future tense. So let's see. They will take him to court later today. So you put object on the first place, then you put the verb to be in future. So he will be taken to court later today. Thus, you create the future tense in passive voice. Okay, guys, so thank you for your work today. And I suggest to summarize the information that we have covered. So let's go back to our first slide. Our topic today was passive voice. We discussed the principal difference between active and passive voices. In active voice, you do an action. In passive voice, the action is done to you. So to construct passive voice, you need to take the verb to be plus verb 3 or ed. And don't forget that the verb to be changes correspondingly to the tenses, right? And we reviewed how it changes on the slides. Now, in which situations you need to use passive? When you make focus on action, not on the doer of the action, or when doer is unknown or unimportant, or when you speak about news or some report, when you want to be impersonal and you make impersonal statement, or when you describe procedure or you write some announcement. So guys, don't forget about your home task. You need to make a list of things that were done by you, and I'm sure you will write there that this webinar was watched and passive voice was learned. So subscribe to our channel and stay with us. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.